serious, I always like to tell this story a wise old judge told a long time ago. See if I can repeat this the right way. Let's just imagine that Bill Mattingly, I'm not wishing him any ill here, let's just imagine what the path would be like when Bill passes on to the pearly gates. And the story goes something like this. He gets up there and he gets greeted by St. Peter, and he says, "Welcome, you've had a good life, and let me show you around the place." So Bill says, "Well, I'd love to see it." So they're walking in this beautiful area in this park, and they see Corky Scales walking down the pathway with this woman on his arm that would scare you to death. She's got like 3 or 4 teeth missing in front. She's eating a sandwich. She has food particles and yelling and cussing, and Corky can't get a word in edgewise. So Bill says, "Hey, there's Corky Scales." St. Peter says, "Oh, that Corky Scales. He almost didn't make it up here, and that's his punishment for the way he lived on earth." So they keep on walking along and along, and pretty soon they encounter Charlie Schladen. And he's got a woman on his arm that looks like she's 30 years older than he is, and she's hitting him all the time, and she's one of the worst things you'd ever see in your bad dreams. And Bill says, "Hey, there's Charlie Schladen." And St. Peter says, "Oh, that Charlie Schladen, he almost didn't make it up here, and that's his punishment for the way he lived on earth." So they walk along a little ways longer, and who do they see? Bill Scott, and he's walking down the path with Raquel Welch on his arm. So Bill says, "Hey, there's there's Bill Scott and Raquel Welch." And St. Peter says, "Oh, that Raquel Welch, she almost didn't make it up here." And that's her punishment for the way she lived on earth. Yeah, I was ready for him because I knew. Let me tell you a little bit about our court system here, okay? It's probably changed a lot since, probably the last 20 years, I'd say. I'm one of the 4 judges down there. I guess I'm a piece of history. I'm the 15th elected circuit court judge in Clark County. A couple years ago, we went to the legislature, the 4 of us, and decided to merge the courts. Some of the counties around the state were doing this, and so we now have what they have in Illinois, they had in Illinois when I was in law school, 1 circuit court with 4 divisions. We still have to meet every 2 years and decide where the cases are going to be filed, how we're going to divide the divorce cases, how we're going to divide the criminal felonies up. And we have to submit that to Indianapolis for their approval. There is so much more approval and oversight from Indianapolis than there was when I started practicing law more than 25 years ago. We really are a statewide court system, and the thinking up there at the Supreme Court, and there's 5 members of the Supreme Court, was that their job wasn't just for review of cases, their job was to administer the whole statewide court system, and so that's what's become of that. At the same time, they have come up with some very novel innovations, and you might guess they've computerized a lot of what we used to do by pencil and paper. Courts are paid for by the county government. Okay, we are state officers elected by local people and paid for by the county government. That's the way it's always been. A judge is a state official, and we answer to our voters here, and we also have to answer through another system to the Indiana Supreme Court for the way we conduct ourselves and our statistics and how much work we get done. And not so much in this county, but in some counties, how much work doesn't get done. So the problem sometimes we have with our county is we're on the border with Louisville, and you know, our community has changed quite a bit. I mean, we no longer are the bedroom community. We're not a small little town across the bridge. We're really a big, thriving area, and we have an enormously busy court system here. Out of the 92 counties in Indiana, we rank among the top 5 in terms of being busiest for our population. This sheet I gave, and I didn't bring enough, and I'm sorry for that, but the state court administration filing statistics, I thought I just might talk about that just to illustrate where we are compared to other counties of similar size. So these are filings that the state court administration keeps track of for all counties across Indiana. And the 2011 statistics were the last ones available. They haven't finished 2012 yet. But you can see by this listing here that our felony level for our population is significant. 2,195 total felonies. Now that doesn't include all the misdemeanors. To try to get a picture of that, we have murder is a felony in our state, and then we have 4 other classes of felonies. So we have and you see them on this sheet. A Class D felony is a smaller grade felony, and our statistics there are illustrated. I've got this second sheet that I think will tell part of the story too, and that is, if you look at this sheet, this talks about felonies filed in Clark County 2009, 2011, and the 3-year history there shows you by these classifications what our total number of felonies are. Now, driving while intoxicated is a misdemeanor. Petty, taking your property or the golf clubs out of your garage, those are misdemeanors. Alcohol charges are misdemeanors. So we have a court down there that handles primarily all of the misdemeanors and some of the Class D felonies. My court, which is now Circuit 1, and the other court down the hall, which is Judge Carmichael's court, Circuit 4, we rotate on a monthly basis the major felonies. This week I'm in a trial for a robbery that ended up in a death. I've got 2 or 3 murder cases on my docket. I have a murder case that's a capital case that was transferred in here from Evansville. It's going to take about a month to try, and we're going to try that in June. You've read in the last 6 months or so, we've had a number of murders here in Clark County, and so that starts the gears rolling where the prosecutor analyzes what happened according to the police, and the prosecutor determines what the charge is, and then the charge gets filed, and then the case moves along. It's generally true that a felony case can get to trial or disposition in about a year. But, you know, what else is going on in Clark County? Well, you read about it every September, and then you read about it in the spring, the budget, okay? We have a prosecutor who depends on the county budget to pay deputy prosecutors and the support staff. So a few years ago, you may have read about it, our county council voluntarily cut the levy, which is the amount of money available to support all of the county offices, by 25%. So that's for them to explain why they did it, but those of you who know accounting, pick on Bill, understand that if your cash money goes down and your expenses go up, you got a problem. And so they're still wrestling with how to fund county government and how do you fund the courts. Our jail down there, in my time in Clark County government, we built 2 additions to that 1968 jail. We have capacity to hold, I think, 460 people in that jail. And last Monday, there were 580 in that jail. Now that includes the really bad guys and gals who are there on pretrial bail. And we have a good number of those. It also includes people who have been sentenced, but the Department of Corrections hasn't come to pick them up yet. It also includes people who are in there on brand new arrest warrants for a new crime or an arrest warrant for a probation violation. So one thing is for sure, our courts are very, very busy. We are working on either on the bench or trying to resolve cases daily. But what's coming in the front door is tough to get out the other door up to the Department of Corrections. And then the Department of Corrections and the state government has taken the position they're not going to build any more prisons. So they basically have told the counties, and you'll read about this in a piece of legislation that's coming out this year, they're counting on the local communities to to create these community correction programs like work release. We have that. We have the home monitoring, the ankle bracelet, day reporting for the less violent kind of people. And this can be a good thing, but you have to be sure that you get the right kind of people in those local programs, because, you know, you put some people in work release, they get 3 hours or 4 hours to go get their goods and then come back. That means they sleep in the jail building down there, and they're supposed to go out and work during the day. Well, sometimes they don't come back. So then we have to send the sheriff out to go find them. That creates another brand new charge, which is a felony called escape. And, you know, it just is a problem when you have 4 judges. The day is going to come, and it won't be anytime soon, but we're going to need more courts here in Clark County. Because, as some of you also know, moving out of the criminal area, family law, divorce law, it's big, very busy these days. Many people who have raised their kids who thought, parenthood is over, they find themselves as grandparents being guardians of their grandchildren. That's fine, the law provides for that, but when natural parents are in a tug of war with the grandparents, you have to have hearings and you have to give them court time. I have had several instances where a trial is really important to the people involved, where I've come in, I've started the trial like on a Tuesday. We go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we have a Saturday session. Because people come to the courts looking for a solution. And we're not the wizards, the 4 of us. We try to apply the law to this situation in front of us, but many of you would be so surprised to know the predicaments that people do get themselves into, even outside of the criminal area. The level of disputes over custody, the threats that go back and forth between grandparents and former daughters-in-law or former sons-in-law. So when they can't resolve it, they turn to the courts, and we really try to do our best with that, but it's tough. It's tough, and many, many times I go home and think about the case that I've heard all day, and I do think, I hope I did the right thing on that. You know, I used to watch other judges when I was practicing, always wondering how they came up with what seemed like such a wise decision. And now that I've been a judge for 4 years, I still couldn't describe the formula to you, but I hear it all and I listen, like in these family cases, and try to come up with a situation or a result where they're talking to each other again. Even if I have to make them go to counseling together, I try to look for the least expensive counselor around, because some people when they're young, and some people on fixed income, can't afford to hire some of these experts from Louisville. So in this family law area, you have the courts, your judges downtown, shaping solutions, shaping remedies, and hoping that it works. Do I see an end in sight? I really think the challenge is going to be for us on the local scene to try to develop, like I'm talking in the family law area, more mediation, more informal resolution of disputes. When we get into the civil claims, car crashes, personal injuries, mediation is a good active vehicle to resolve some of those. You often have insurance companies involved, and they have good lawyers, the plaintiff's lawyers are good lawyers, and so they sit down and try to find a solution that fits all of them. So mediation is a good tool. The problem with family law, mediation, we use it a lot, but it takes a lot longer, because people go to that mediator's office and they're mad. And sometimes you just have to let people have their say. Okay, you turn to them as the mediator and say, okay, it's been a half hour now. Is it all out? Do you feel better? And you'd be surprised. Sometimes people say, yeah, I do. And then hopefully you try to build a solution that day. Mediation is based on the concept that if you get all the players involved with the trained mediator, they can make a solution that day and sign it and not put their case in the hands of a jury or the strange judge in the mysterious black robe. So mediation is a good thing. We have a probation department down there that's busy because of our felony caseload. They work hard. We have a work release center that I think is a nice service, and I've been reluctant about that. I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of a conservative judge. But these numbers in that jail lead to lawsuits against the county. So every 4 or 5 months or so, I'll sit down with my staff and say, okay, let's go through my list in the jail and see whether we can send some of those to community corrections. They're not the really violent, bad people. What are their charges? How long have they been lingering there? And so I do that on occasion, and so far it's worked. So far no one's done something bad where they've gotten a break to go over to the community corrections program or work release. See, community corrections is like the umbrella. They can put you on work release, they can put the bracelet on your ankle and track you, or they can have you do some day reporting to them 2 or 3 times a week. And that's a good solution too. Sometimes the prosecutor's charges look so good the day they're filed, and they look so strong and they sound so mean when you read them in the paper. But sometimes in those criminal cases that are filed, they don't quite develop out that way. And when you get 6 months down the road, a witness is moved, or the 2 people that were fighting and one of them had a black eye that led to the arrest, they're back in love. And so they're engaged or they're getting married. You know, the state doesn't belong in that relationship at all. So charges sometimes get dismissed. Sometimes the green leafy substance the person's caught with, aha, it's marijuana. It really does turn out sometimes to be oregano or some other green condiment. So, you know, I always tell, I teach part-time over in Louisville, and I always tell my students, just don't believe it all when you read about it or see it on television. Let the case develop a little bit more. So that's really what I wanted to talk about. I thought you might have some questions. Our court system is really working hard. Our jail population's serious. No one can scientifically point to 2 or 3 reasons why our jail population is so big and why we have so many arrests. Some of us think it's because we're close to Louisville. Heroin might surprise you, but heroin is the big drug on the street these days. Some of us grew up thinking about heroin in those old movies, addictive, people, you know, sleeping in these seedy hotels. But the pills, the hydrocodone and the pills that were so popular for 4 or 5 years, the drug manufacturers changed some of the components a couple of years ago. So people can't get those components and create their other pills to sell in the secondary market. You would be stunned and shocked, and your feelings would be hurt to know how much heroin's out there, how many people sneak heroin into the jail, hiding it in all the places you're going to imagine the moment I say it. And there are really strict searches down there for men and women, and the places they find the heroin is just the places you'd expect. It's a big drug. People who are 13 to 16 to 17 are using heroin. And so it's something that comes to us in our generation back to earlier times. So we try to deal with that. We've got a good drug court operation down there with Judge Jacoby, but the volume is so big. And we try to get everybody, we try to give everyone their attention. It just takes some time to move that many people through the system. So bear in mind, I mean, in the context of some of these budget stories you may read about, sooner or later, of course nobody likes new taxes, but sooner or later there will start a public discussion about adding a couple courts to this county. Won't be this year, won't be next year, but we will be at a point